Hey YouTube, Otto here. So if you haven't heard the news, there is a new Captain's Log out. I will have the web address in the description down below. You can go and read it yourself, or you can just pause the video. We're going to go over them real quick here. I'll give a little bit of info on them, my thoughts on it, and it was not going to be as long as the other one because I just kind of want to zip through these. We'll be making some general changes to the systems which will impact both PvE and PvP servers. The boat decay system will be enabled. This means that there will be a tagging system attached to boats which will cause them to self-destruct after multiple weeks of inactivity on PvE, Golden Age Ruin, and Freeport servers. To tag a boat, the owner of that boat, single player or company, will just need to enter its stasis render distance. So I don't see this as a negative. It's really just getting rid of the boats and stuff that have been sitting out there for weeks doing nothing. And so the player pretty much is either abandoning it or really not using it. And I know some people like to leave a ship over at the Golden Age Ruin so that they can do their Fountain of Youth relatively quickly. All you have to do is jump to the boat and jump back. Done. You've refreshed your timers and it's good to go. So this is not going to hurt anyone who is active. Okay, even if you're active within a week or two, it's not going to burn your boat. So that I just see as a bonus. The less stuff the servers have to track, structures, boats, buildings, tames, all that stuff that belong to people, the quicker and less lag and load will be on the servers, and that's a plus. Okay, claim owners will be able to demolish structures via the pinwheel on their settlements temporarily as long as the structure has been placed within the last 12 hours. After the 12-hour period has passed, they will not be able to demolish the structure using the pinwheel and must manually destroy it. Claim owners can do this outside of raid hours or warlike. This exists as an anti-griefing mechanism. On PvE servers, we may extend this time beyond 12 hours as players will not have the option to destroy via PvP. I guess my thoughts on this, some of the first things that come to me are 12 hours may not be enough. Actually, I believe 12 hours is not enough on PvE because I think expecting a player to log in every single day is excessive. We all have lives outside of the entertainment we get from Atlas and other games and stuff that we play, other forms of media and whatnot that we use for entertainment. I just think that if a player has spent 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 plus hours, however much time it is, busting their butt working on something on an island, and they choose to maybe they take 4, 5, 6 days off, like my wife and I are about to. We're about to take off for a week's vacation. We will not be logging on. I would not want to come back and find a bunch of trash all over our property because I decided to take some time off for real life stuff, get away with the family, and have a good time. And that's just one example. Sometimes a lot of college students and stuff get crammed with finals. It's not strange to take 2-3 days off straight to do nothing but focus on your studies and whatnot. And so, again, you don't want to come back and find a bunch of trash all over your stuff. So I definitely think 12 hours is not enough for PvE. PvP, on the other hand, shouldn't be such a huge issue because, well, this says claim owners. And I hope that is more than just the individual that is the head of the company. I hope that means everyone in the company is a part of the ownership. That way, if anyone from the company logs in, they can keep things cleaned up when the rest of us are out doing other real life stuff. If we need to take several days off for this or that or whatever, even a family emergency or something, maybe got a death in the family or, whatever happens. You need to be able to take some time off and back away from it and have the rest of your org help take care of things when you're gone. Even if you're the head of an org, you should not have to be there every single day. So yeah, I hope I'm understanding that correct. The There will be a notice sent to the settlement owner's company and also via cross-server notification pop-up when new players' companies are building on their territory. I like that. I think that's huge. Giving us heads up saying, yo, you know what would also be great? What would be awesome is if you didn't just give us the pop-up, but you gave us the coordinates for the pop-up. Okay, for the wherever the building or whatever's happening. That way we don't have to search all over the place. We can come right in and know right away. See, the thing is don't get me wrong, okay? Atlas has got a great thing going now. Now, after it's starting to distance itself from the rough initial release it had. Okay, I know a lot of us have been out there trying to reassure people that it is not the nightmare that it was when it first dropped. It has gotten a lot better. The devs have been busting their butt, and they are trying to make things better, okay? But remember, you got to stay focused on when a game becomes more of a burden than it is fun. And so when the game has a ton of tedious things you have to track down all over the place, and what you do is you log in for an evening and you spend the first 2 hours of your game time doing nothing but running around trying to take care of these tedious things before you can even jump out and start having the fun stuff. That is a problem. That is an excessive burden to put on a player that is, active within the game. I think we should be rewarding active players instead of putting heavier and heavier loads of burden on them. And so, there's various areas of Atlas that could be better. The devs are working on it, trying to make it better. We can see this. I mean, these notes, the mega patch that's going in March, the patch fixes, they're doing, I believe, the best that they can, and I give them, props for that. I think they're doing fantastic. But yeah, so moving on, getting the coordinates for the pop-up would be awesome as well. So we're not hunting all over the place saying, well, one of my properties, I have 3, 4, 5 islands. I don't really know which one it's on. It's on one of my properties, And if you don't want to give coordinates at a bare minimal, give the island, the exact grid location in the island. I love the cross-server notifications. That's awesome. The Discord option is huge because I know for myself and a lot of people I run with, we're all in Discord. We have tons of webhooks from other things we use too, and so the Discord part is going to really help a ton. Email might get a little bit crazy. I know some of us get a ton of email as it is, so I'm not going to say the email part I would use, but the Discord part definitely. Okay, PvE claim changes. We received an extensive amount of feedback from the PvE community regarding our upcoming changes. The overwhelming clear message was a desire to retain some form of claiming system. And you know why that is. The reason that is because those of us that have been, and I've been on both PvP and PvE, but the reason for that is I believe that people want to be able to build without having their stuff messed up by another player that just happens to casually come in, or a neighbor. Maybe you have a neighbor on your island that just wants to be a jerk. Okay, and he wants to build a huge walkway straight across the entrance to your bay, to the entire inlet to the waterway bay that covers the entire harbor for the inlet area of the island. Okay, people are doing stuff like that, and there needs to be a way to prevent that. So I'm all for a claiming system on PvE. Absolutely. That way you know exactly what your boundaries are. To me, that is very important. One aspect of the design we intend to stick to is the fact that we want players to always have an option to build. Otherwise, the game cannot be truly experienced in its current state. We understand that there are some concerns regarding how that could potentially be exploited in a PvE environment. I've seen these exploits, and some of them are horrific. They are as true to PvP as you can get. And it's just because of the rule sets that are on PvE. And that's part of the problem. By having a claim system, it eliminates a lot of the headache that can happen with some of the exploits out there. It prevents people from griefing you because they just didn't like you, or because you just happened to get a piece of the land that they wanted to, or whatever it is. It's often a disagreement of some kind, and then they just want to cause problems. And we'll be working on designs and systems to ensure that this isn't the case from a technical point of view, as well as through DGM involvement. This here tells me that if the code can't cover it, that maybe they're going to be able to get a GM to fix the issue. To me, that is very important. This here is personalized attention. This here tells me as a player that they care and that they are trying. And to me, that's important. With the Mega March update, the claim systems on PvE will change from being lawless-esque servers to the following. Okay, so I believe what this means is that with the March 20th notes, if you go and look at them, the Mega Patch, there was going to be no claiming whatsoever on any of the grids in PvE. And so essentially everything was being handled as lawless. Everything would have a decay, and you would have to pay the little maintenance building thing they're putting in the game to keep your area from decaying. That would be your upkeep costs. That's, I believe, what they're calling lawless-esque servers. Well, now they're changing that, and let's see what it's going to. Use the same claim system as PvP, but remove the raidable hours and war aspect. Okay, now for those that don't know what the PvP raid system is, I'm sorry, not raid system, but the claim system. You claim, one claim flag now is for an entire island. When you put down on an island to claim it, you pretty much become the governor of that island, and so you're pretty much law of that island. Other people will come in and can build on your island, but you get final say as to pretty much who gets to stay and who pretty much has to go. If you don't want the structures there, you can destroy them. Okay, it's your island. You own it. Okay, now obviously it's not meant for, if there's 800, even if there's 1,000 islands in the entire Atlas map grid, it's not meant for 1,000 single players to run around and each grab one island and then become horrible dictators over those islands and push the rest of the Atlas community into the ocean. That's not what this is for. This is for companies. Okay, the head of a company, the company will put down in order to claim an island, and you'll own the entire island. And there's more rules and stuff to go with it, but we'll cover those as we're going through here. This means that players will be able to claim islands, and anyone can build on those settlements. Notice what it said. It said anyone, not just those in your company or your alliance. Okay? Each settlement will have an upkeep cost, which is based on a variety of factors, such as the island's ranking, the number of settlements that the company has, and how many different companies are building on the settlement. Settlement owners will be able to set a tax rate, and also players will be able to place their player-run shops on claimed land. Okay, now something just come to me from this, and that I would love to see, okay? I would love to see a variable tax rate that when you own an island, you get pretty much a governor like user interface, okay? And it says, okay, this is your island, and your island name is, we'll just call it Bahamas, okay? So your island name is Bahamas, and every single person that has put down property on your island is listed under that interface. This is who is got stuff on your island, okay? And it's the name of the companies. If they're not in a company and they're an individual, just list the individual. I would like to be able to set a variable tax rate from one individual to the next. And the reason being is because some people are extremely difficult to work with, and they actually drag down the island versus others that are really great. I would love to be able to give those that are really great like a 5 to 10% tax rate, and then give those that want to be pushy and rude and inconsiderate out there a 20 to 30% tax rate. I would love to be able to set those individually according to who's on the island. And that is just to be, well, to me it's really about, I want everyone to be able to get along on the island. But if you have a problem with someone, I don't immediately want to just kick them off. I don't want to say, yo, dude, I'm sorry you've spent 300 hours building your base and your harbor and everything, but you're being a problem to too many people, and so I'm going to have to remove you. I would rather say, hey, here's a warning, boom, let's hit you with a penalty for a while and see if you don't change your attitude. If your attitude changes, then we can lower it back down to normal and all can be well. If it doesn't change, the next move is not going to be a higher tax rate, it's going to be destruction of all your property. And so that would be my approach. So yeah, I'd like to be able to set tax rates individually. However, we are planning some PvE specific changes. will be imposing a hard limit on claim points equivalent to one small island for single players. I think this is fine. I heard someone else say in another review on this that they were like, no, I don't think single players should be able to own an island. It should have to be at least a minimum of 2 people. Let's make something clear. The quantity of the people in your org does not determine the quality of your org. Okay? Atlas does not need a ton of toxic players making life hell for the rest of the player base. Okay? And I know right now there are players out there, single players, that have more time in Atlas than some entire small orgs do. Okay, so it doesn't determine the quality of the player because they're a single player. There are going to be single players out there that are going to make better governors and be more fair and more encouraging for their player base on their island than there will be orgs out there that have several hundred people in them. And so I think this is totally fine. I don't see a problem with that. The problem is not going to be whether a single player owns an island or not, a small island, okay? The problem is going to come, and this is not going to be single player or many players, whether it's a single player that's not in an org or an org that has 250 people. The problems are going to arise when you have governors of islands that are handling things poorly, and they're just walking on those that are on their islands. And I think some people are never going to run into this problem. They're never going to have it because their governor is going to be great. Okay, they're going to understand that that island is united when that island comes under attack. This is obviously PvP. That island needs to unite to push back that force. Okay, and on PvE, I think there's actually more incentive to unite under PvP than there is PvE, and so that might actually put less pressure on the governor to be a good governor, saying, you know what, I don't really need you on my island. Other than I could use your resources to help pay for the maintenance cost on the island. So that's really my main concern. I think PvP governors do have more incentive to unite their people on their island than PvE does. And that would be my concern. I think PvE might be able to be a bit more relaxed on the governors, so you could have a mediocre governor that can kind of push people around a bit, and that's where I'm really concerned. I'm concerned there's going to be problems with poor governors. Companies will be able to own multiple settlements, but there will be a hard limit, and it will be based on the island points and the number of players who are currently in that company. This means that larger companies will have access to more claim points, and are therefore able to settle on more islands with higher rankings. However, we will still be imposing a relatively low cap. I'm all for the cap. I think the cap is great. I think it's when any one org gets too big and it just starts steamrolling everyone else, the entire map gets totally imbalanced and it actually destroys gameplay for a ton of players. And so if you want to know why a lot of people are just walking away from the game, go see if you have a massive imbalance in your Atlas somewhere. Yeah, that would definitely be an issue. When you have orgs out there that are 2, 3, 4, 5, and at this point I'm talking about alliances, okay, that are all joined together in multiple orgs joined together in an alliance, and they're able to steamroll all the small to medium orgs, that is going to destroy the gameplay experience for people, and people are going to bounce. What I'm actually hoping happens, and again this is more on the PvP side than the PvE, I'm hoping entire islands unite and they realize that they're in it together and they all need to pitch in. Now there's going to be some problems with that. Some players are just too selfish and they don't really want to pitch in and help anybody, but their own agenda. Clearly they're not really team players. And unfortunately sometimes that's exactly who is the head of an org. They're not in the org for everyone else, they're in it for themselves. And if they can use everyone else to achieve their agenda, then that's what they'll go for. It just really depends on what kind of leader you have. I think the claim points thing is cool. I think that's good. Like right now, this is still, it's not vague, but there's still like a lot of questions. Like, you know, how many points, like are we going to, if we go to an island, let's say I go to a small island, am I going to know how many points it takes to claim that island? And can I clearly see how many points I have if I'm in a company of one because I just started it and haven't recruited anyone yet? Am I going to see how many points I have versus how many points the island costs? That way I don't go to all the work of, first off, traveling there. Secondly, well, you have to go there, I guess, in order to check out the points. But once you get there, building your tax bank, putting it down, setting your claim flag, and trying to go through all of that to then come to realize I can't even own this island because I'm 5 points too short, or 10 points, or however many points the system works, however it works. Secondly, if I have an org of 2 people, okay, am I, again, going to be able to see how many points my org is worth so that I know exactly how many points the islands are worth? Are we going to be able to just open up the atlas and look at, oh, this island is worth 30 points. This one over here is worth 57 points. We are 2 people. We have 20 points. We can't claim either one of those. So are we going to know that, or are we going to have to travel all over the atlas in order to check every single island's value so that we can see which ones we could take? So there's a concern. Another concern is what's to stop... It would be the hard cap. Okay. What's to stop, I'm still going to ask it, a large org from dominating a few small islands because they have either key locations, or maybe they just take them because they want to own all the islands in one grid. Maybe they want the entire grid to be theirs, and they don't want to have to sweat anyone else coming into their grid. What I'm saying is if larger orgs are taking over smaller islands, because we all know even the small islands have resources and whatnot. One of the biggest things you get on the bigger islands is more land. And sometimes you need that land to build various things, and sometimes you don't. You could have an org of 250 people on a small to medium island. You don't have to have a huge island for a huge org. It's definitely going to change your ability to pull resources from it. If you're looking for your entire org to be sustained from that one island, that might be an issue. But you can always travel to another island and get resources from somewhere else. So you could still remedy that. Like I was speaking to someone else just a bit ago. I said, well, wait a minute. If you can only have 4 orgs in an alliance, and each org is 250 people, that's 1,000. What's to stop us from having more than 1,000 people all living off of the same large island? What's to stop us from putting, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 people on one large island, just to make that island like uber resilient to wartime, so that no one wants to even come close to it because the amount of people there that live there is just too great. Now, obviously, some people would say, well, it's going to be the resources that are going to limit that many people from being on that island. That's only the case if they try to use that island as their complete sustainment. If they go to other islands, like, for example, maybe all those same groups say, you know what? Let's grab every island in this grid. Let's just own the whole grid. Now they have an entire grid to sustain them all. But that still doesn't stop 2,000-3,000 people from all lining up on one island. So that island, maybe it's their home base island, is super strong, and then all they have to do is jump around to the other islands with beds. Have mini bases there, or even full bases, and have gear and everything there, and then switch out, and then boom, you can defend any one of those islands in your entire grid. So the whole point of that is, you can have more than 1,000 on one island if you wanted to. It just really depends on how you decide to play out this new system. And that's... I think it's a great strategy for keeping a single island like super secure, because we all can't log in every single day, and we can't be on 24 hours a day every day. Our entire lives can't be Atlas. That's just not the way life works. But by having tons of people on your island, not only does it make the overall cost cheaper to live there, but it also brings a whole lot more people there to secure it in the event of war. Right? And I just talked to a buddy not too long ago, and he said, nah, dude, he said, I'm taking a break from Atlas because I'm tired of logging in and finding all my stuff destroyed. That is what killed Atlas for him. And that's what I knew that was the case for several people, but this was weeks ago. They'd already quit weeks ago. And so I talked to him recently about coming back after the big patch, and he said, nah, dude, right now I'm I'm into something else and I'm gonna take a break from Atlas because I'm just tired of logging in and having every bit of my stuff destroyed. And so yeah, that what happened is the burden of the game became greater than the fun. There was nothing there to protect him because he was not in a mega org. And if we are saying to the player base that the only people that are important or that are even protected are those in a mega org, okay, your player base is going to be horrible all the way up through the life of Atlas. In fact, it'll probably die prematurely because you're not going to have enough people to sustain the entire game. We all know that these MMOs with the combat systems like this with the big orgs, they're not made up of a couple orgs. There's usually a couple big ones, but then there's tons of medium and small ones all over the place, and they all come together to create the entire experience and the economy within the game. Company alliances will no longer be available on PvE. We understand that there are some legitimate use cases. However, in this sandbox environment, we believe they will primarily be used to game the system and get past the company rules limitations. We recognize that this may impact how trading communications take place on PvE servers, and we are looking into an alternative option for players. I'm asking myself now, like, what is the point of the alliance on the PvE? I had alliances on PvE before, and we hung out and we did different stuff together, but there was often so many weaknesses in the alliance that it wasn't really even all that important. For example, back then, you couldn't fire each other's guns, you couldn't jump to each other's beds, you couldn't sail each other's ships. It's like you couldn't really interchangeably engage with each other's stuff. And so, like, for example, many times we are offered to go out on various treasure hunts and events with allies. And we tell them every time, we can't travel with you because if we die, we have no way to get back. Okay, you can't respawn on their ships. And so you had to always bring your own ship, and that's not always possible. And so we had to turn down several events because maybe one of our ships was in a major remodel. We didn't have something big enough that could do exactly what we were all going out to do. Maybe it wasn't equipped properly. There was just several various things that would come up, and it was like, you know, we can't go with you guys because if we die, then there's no way to respawn and go back with you guys. And the same problem was we couldn't sail each other's ships. We couldn't use each other's cannons and mortars. We couldn't even help, do different things like that. And that was on the PvE. And so the problem with the alliances where they were just too weak. They needed a lot of TLC to really dive down into them and say, okay, you're in an alliance. Here's your user interface and all your options and functions, okay, that you're allowed to do within that alliance. Oh, look, we have checkboxes. Can you open and close doors? Can use Helm? Can use Lieutenant platform? Can use Alliance beds? And just checks, X's or whatever to allow this people in this alliance to be able to do these things within this alliance. And then you jump to another alliance, and it's totally different because it's a different alliance. So you didn't have any of that, and it really needs that so that the alliances actually mean more. Right now, this does not bother me one bit. It doesn't bother me one bit because alliances did not do enough. Okay? An alliance was nothing more than a name. Okay? It was a name for a couple orgs that were in a little list on a user interface. And their names would turn like a tealish color, light bluish color, whatever it was. That's all it was. It didn't even mean much. It was more of a title than it was real power. Okay, PvP claim changes. We'll also be adding some new options along with changing how cannons are used during raidable wartime hours. Give claim owners the option. See, that's good. That means it's an on-off. Give claim owners the option to enable allied companies to build cannons on their lands. See, I like that. And if you were smart, okay, and I'm not saying y'all out there you're not smart, okay, I'm just saying I think that this would be a wise decision. Pull together with your buddies right now. Figure out where you're going to put down, what area of the map you'd like to put down on, and try to get everyone on your island within your alliance, within those 4 orgs. so that you are all able to fully back each other up, okay, in the max capacity that you can within the game. Well, now we know, and what guys are going to get it here in a minute. There's a neutral that you can be set to now. You can be an ally, you can be neutral, or you can be an enemy. And you could have a bunch of neutral people on your island, but really it would be more beneficial if you were all working together for the same thing. Okay, we all know that often the more someone has invested in something, often the more they will do in order to keep it secure or safe or taken care of, or something like that. If you have very little into it or you don't really care about it, then you'll often neglect it or not even take care of it well. And I'm concerned that if you have too many miscellaneous people all over your island that are not really pulling together for the same cause, that could potentially hurt not only the unity, but also the safety of the island when it comes under attack. So yeah. Some of these islands are big. If you're in the official now, you can go sail around and look at some of the islands, and some of them are huge. They could easily handle several orgs, like big orgs, right on the same island. Now, I wouldn't bank on that one island sustaining everybody, but you're 4 big orgs, right? You're 4 orgs across the same island so that you're all in the same alliance. You have other islands in that same grid, and you have other islands around you in other grids. You can take other islands. You could go take one island and say, you know why we own this island? We own this island for one reason: resources. That's why we took it. That's why we own it. That's why we pay our maintenance on it, because it's a great source for resources. It just depends on how you decide to play the Atlas. Give company owners the option to allow alloys to use their cannons. Now that to me is a great start, but I would like more than just cannons. Okay, allies need to be able to do as much as we can do within our company, shy of removing, not meddling with the company itself, but the permissions to use things within that company. We need checkboxes to determine, okay, they can use cannons, they can use doors, they can use helms, they can use ships, they can use, whatever it is. You can make it as small, as in depth as you want. You could say, can use cabinets in this building. You could separate it per building according to whatever's built on your island, and how it's labeled. Maybe as a new building goes up, and you radial menu it and say, this is an official building on this island, and this is the name of it. And the moment you do that, it kicks in over into the user interface under the governance of the island, that interface. You open that up, you go to that building, and it says, okay, now I can give allies, individual, access to this building or not. Or I can let this alloy have access to it, but then not the other two. Because maybe I'm closer with that alloy and they're more trusted, and so I know that they're good. Okay, so something like that. Permissions are huge, So I think we need more permissions when it comes to our allies. I think we really need a full, in-depth selection of permissions for our alloys. Our alloys. Our allies. Enable an active timer on cannon structured placed by non-alloyed companies during wartime and rateable hours to prevent instant FOB, similarly to battery-powered heavy turrets activation timer and arc. Okay, now the way I read this is, you're not going to be able to immediately place a cannon down and just load it up and bang, bang, bang. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to put it down, and it's going to be on a timer. Okay? That prevents instant use. After the timer expires, then you will be able to use it. And my question on this is, you are putting property down on my island. Okay? So I want to see where your maintenance is on that item. Okay? And so even if you're an enemy, what I think should be, there should be a upfront cost that must be paid by enemies, okay, that are putting down on an island during that wartime, if they want to place an item down. I do not think you should be able to place an item down scot-free, because otherwise they could bring all kinds of trash in there and put it all over the place. They can build walls that are 100 stories tall just to get up over top of everything and anything in your island, or they could totally build down in your bay and block every single ship so you can't leave anywhere. They could potentially block you from being able to move anywhere around your island. Okay, they could build in front of your doors and stuff so you can't get out of doors. And so they could do tons of stuff. And someone would be like, well, they'd have to have the opportunity to do that. And be like, yeah, if you're not right there defending your base in that moment, they can build anything they want, anywhere they want. And that to me is a huge red flag. It's one thing if you come to my island and you're attacking me with ships and you're with foot soldiers. It's a different thing when you start dropping down property. When you start dropping down property, now you better start paying me for that. Because everyone else on this island had to pay to be here. And so you're no exception. So I think that they should have to pay a heavy surcharge up front if they're going to put down anything. And it needs to be, yeah, obviously they need to be able to pay it in the moment. It's not like a rain check. Oh, I'll pay you that later. Or you have a debt over at the local bank that you are trying to destroy yourself. They need to pay that heavy surcharge up front right now. And I'd actually be fine if they can't even build on your property, because I actually see that causing more problems than good. I see ways of being able to create a nightmare in PvP Atlas with that right there alone. Allowing an enemy to build on your property can potentially be very, very bad. It could create problems that are destroying massive amounts of hours that other players have put in. It could create scenarios that are unwinnable by the defending island, because maybe they're on a small to medium island and they're not real big, and you get a super mega org that come in, or even their alliance comes in, and they build stuff all over the place, no one in, no one out. Next thing you know, you got doors surrounding your entire island, nobody can move anywhere, everything's getting completely obliterated, you can't do anything about it, and you're the governor of the island. And so you can get stuck real fast. So I see red flags with that. I think that needs to be massively put into check somehow. Maybe even limiting the number of structures a company can put on an island that they don't own during wartime. And, of course, charging them that surcharge because up front, because they're putting down a piece of property and everyone else there had to pay for theirs. So I think they should have to pay for theirs too. Yeah, it's already hard enough to keep bases alive when you have heavy warships coming in, galleons coming in, blowing the heck out of walls and doors, and one broadside knocking doors out, and tons of ships coming swarming into your harbor, and then foot soldiers all over the place, explosive kegs all over, because now they're not even that heavy, and they're blowing huge holes in your walls, and they run in and popcorn everything, and next thing you know, your 300 hours that you had into it across your company has been leveled in a single attack, and there wasn't really much you could do about it. That is a massive burden on an org, and that is the kind of stuff that people look at and say, you know what? This is the new system. I'm done with it. I'm going to go play a game that I actually enjoy and I have fun with. It doesn't waste hundreds and hundreds of my hours of my life, hours we can never get back. So yeah, I don't care for that one. I think that right there is a red flag. I think it's going to cause more problems than it is good. And I'm mostly concerned about, I'm not worried about it when you got an org of like maybe 100 people against an org of 100 people and the people online are relatively even. It's when those scales get massively imbalanced, where you have like a couple hundred people coming after an org that barely even has 50, and at the time they're lucky if they have 20 people online. Right? And so, and they own an island, and there's only a few other straggler orgs on there, and they're both small. You know, they're small, and so there's not really a force much there. I can't tell the guy that has put in 1,000 hours into Atlas, not Ark, but into Atlas, that all his hours were obliterated because he was in an org that was too small. Because now it's going to get out there that Atlas only cares about big orgs, and you don't want that. Okay, that's just bad PR. And so there's got to be something that keeps that kind of stuff in check. And I don't think players are complaining a whole lot for losing things at sea. I think the main issue is watching their bases, their home place of comfort and peace and operations get obliterated by big orgs. I think that is what is imbalancing the Atlas so much. At least that's what I'm hearing from the players I'm speaking to. And that is my own view too. I'm all down for tons and tons of sea battles and fights and all that. But if you're able to come in and destroy a massive amount of work because I'm in a smaller org than you are, that to me says that the game has a critical flaw that needs to be immediately corrected, or it's time to leave the game and go somewhere else. There are tons of other survival games that are coming out every year. I'm not even going to start naming them, but they're out there. And so Atlas is only one dish on an all-you-can-eat buffet. And so it needs to bring something to the table that the others are not bringing. And I think part of it for any developer team is the community needs to know that you care and that you are really trying to not only just pull together your vision, but also the likes and dislikes of the community. And I think that plays off as a community as a whole, not necessarily individuals. Because I know there are some individuals out there that have some really strong opinions, but I'm going to ask you, does that opinion or does that perspective help the Atlas as a whole, or does it only cater to the minority? And unfortunately, in a business, of game development, you need to be able to cater to the largest audience that you can. And I think things that hurt the majority of players versus just a small portion of the players need to be looked at first, because those are going to help you retain a higher amount of your player base. It doesn't matter how great Atlas is in a year if there's no community left. Okay? If the community has dropped away to nothing and people don't come back, because that's what happens to a lot of games. Once people bounce, they're done. They might stop in later, 6 months or a year later, to kind of check it out a little bit, but then they don't really stay, and then they just go and play other things, because there's so many titles coming out all the time. And so it really, sometimes you only get one opportunity to make a first impression. And once in a while, you'll have a forgiving community that perseveres, and they're willing to oversee, okay, there was a rough start. We've all seen tons of games out there that have rough starts. But as time went on, they got better and better. And so far what I'm seeing is Atlas has gotten better. Okay, it's gotten better in a lot of ways. But there are a few key things that need to be balanced really delicately, and it needs to cover all players. Small, medium, large. There needs to be something there that's going to protect the player base from having tons of hours destroyed because they were just not in a mega org. That is my biggest concern. And I run in what would be classified as a mega org in another title. But we have put out a unit for Atlas, and so far, we have what I would classify, looking at the percentages between one player and 250 in an org, we have what would be called a small org. Now, as an org itself, we are not small, not even close. But that is how much interest there is in the org right now. That could change, but right now, that's how much interest there is for Atlas. And what a lot of people have said, we've been in the Discord, we've debated it, we've discussed it a ton, is Atlas had so many negative reviews on Steam, it has scared a lot of people away. They just do not want to waste their money on a title that they're potentially not going to like. And it has been hard for us to try to get several people to be like, hey, that's not what it's like. That's what it was like when it first dropped. A lot of things have changed and been fixed. We're having fun with it. These are real live testimonies, about their experiences. I shared with people my first week with Atlas was an absolute nightmare. I couldn't even get in. It was just one crash after another. But after I was able to get in, there was some that were very frustrating. I'm not even going to downplay it. It's very difficult. But I've seen it grow and get a whole lot better. I just hope in this next mega patch that's going to change the game a lot, there's not one or more game-breaking things that can be abused or exploited that's just going to kill the game. It's just going to be that last nail in the coffin and be like, that's it. They tried, it just had too many fatal flaws, too many people were having a hard time, and people just don't come back. It's not fun playing in a game that has no community, especially when it's an MMO. Delaying on joining a new company or alliance after leaving 24 hours. This may not be enough. You might want to consider 48 or 72 hours. And the reason I say that is because soon, when that mega patch drops, you're going to have players, and I'm just going to give you an example, okay? Let's say I have a dozen friends, and we all get together, we jump in an org, we go and we grab an island. Boom, it's ours. Those dozen friends leave the org. Only the head of the org stays. Those dozen friends, 24 hours later, the very next afternoon, boom, they go jump in one of the other buddies' orgs that they created, and boom, they go grab another island, okay? And then as soon as that's done, they leave again. 24 hours later. The first couple weeks after this mega patch are going to be very, very important. That's going to determine what a lot of orgs first get their What I believe is the most important island is the very first island, because you may not be able to get into another island after everything gets filled up. Property may be permanently gone. They've already said there's not going to be stealing property anymore. And so your chances to get another island are done. And the only way an island opens up is if an org stops paying their maintenance. They can't pay their maintenance, and then it comes up for grabs. But it came up for maintenance because they stopped paying their lease or their rent or their maintenance. Call it what you want. It's an upkeep fee. And that's what happens in real life. You stop paying your car payment, they come and take your car. You stop paying your rent, you get an eviction notice. You know what I'm saying? You stop paying for your house, the bank wants it back. And that's what I see happening with Atlas. Is the only way you're going to be able to get land again is if they stop paying for their maintenance up on their island. And I don't see a lot of orgs that happening to. It could be months and months, if at all, down the road that something like that happens. So yeah, I think that maybe 24 hours is too short. I see people trying to take advantage of this to the max to try to grab. If you are doing your homework, there are islands out there that are far better than others. Not just because of size, but because of location and because of this current season's resource list. So yeah, some of them are more ideal because they're by a golden ruin. Some of them are by Power Stone. Some are by the Kraken. Some of them are in better biomes. Some people prefer certain biomes versus others. Some biomes are more habitable for people than others. And so yeah, I think that some people will be trying to use this 24-hour, in my opinion, is kind of short. I think if you shouldn't be bouncing in and out of alliances and new companies. If you are, I think there's already a problem. 24 hours should be, I think, is just too short. I think 48 to 72 is more realistic. I think the whole point is you don't want people jumping in and out of company and alliances because there's a good chance if they are, they may be trying to abuse or exploit something. Company owners and admins can now set other companies into neutral. I like this one. This is nice because it helps you organize who's out there. You don't have to be like, adrenaline's all pumping because there's 3 ships that just appeared on the horizon and, oh, okay, chill out. Okay, they're neutral, they're not red, they're not enemy. Okay, we don't have to worry about this one trip we made that we're loaded to the hilt with resources, that we're going to get taken out because we were just not prepared in that moment. This is done via the in-game pinwheel. Similarly to alliances, when targeting another company's structure or player, companies which are marked as neutral will have a different colored display HUD as a way for players to indicate they are non-hostile. However, they will not have other benefits, which the alliance system would provide. In summary, there will now be 3 states in which other companies can appear: alloy, neutral, enemy. This to me is fantastic. This is definitely was needed. A lot of your neutrals are going to be on your do not shoot list. You know what they are? They're probably, some of them, they're not in your alliance, but they're on your islands. Okay, and so you have an unspoken alliance to work together on your islands and take care of them together. And you don't want to accidentally hit them. You don't want anyone in your org to accidentally, or your alliance to accidentally take someone down. And you could easily put your cooperative island natives, if you will, on neutral. That would just be one use of it. Next, we acknowledge that there has been a lot of feedback regarding alliance limitations and how they impact mid-sized companies, along with the role they play when sharing territory. This is something we are currently discussing, and we may have an update for you closer to the time of the patch. Okay, yeah. To me, it's not just mid-size, it's small too, man. And to me, some of the players that suffer the most, I believe, in Atlas, at this time right now, in the current shape it's in, and in this upcoming one, are going to be the small to mid-size. It's unfortunate, but... And the hard part is you can't force players to join big alliance or big orgs. We're just going to call the 250 big. You can't force them to join the large orgs because a lot of times the large orgs do not equal higher quality. In the org I'm in, which is way bigger than 250 in another title, we just went through and discussed several points. I was just speaking with some of the fellow leadership just yesterday about issues between quantity and quality. And you can't force players into large orgs that have poor quality because there's just so many that no one knows each other. Everyone runs in a similar clique anyhow. Every now and again you meet another guy that's pretty cool or another gal that's pretty cool and your group expands a little bit and you run together. But there's no way 250 people fully know each other fully. It just doesn't happen. I've run many orgs and clans and guilds, call them what you want, and I've had the most fun historically across the time that I've gamed and been active in online communities, MMOs, with 50 people and less. And it doesn't mean there wasn't more there than that. It just means that those were the ones that I knew the most and that I was engaging with the most. That I could tell you names and I could tell you, what they did for the org and the battles we fought together and just different things like that. The huge orgs, it's just a power thing. And often when you are trying to balance a game that has the potential for huge orgs and then small orgs, there's usually a huge imbalance. And 95% of the time, the small to medium are the ones that get the short end of the stick. They're the ones that suffer. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. And the best way to fix that is don't make your disbursement between small and large so huge. Minimize it. Because people can still have a ton of fun without being in mega orgs. And I know there's orgs out there that want to play together. I'm in one now that we like to run together. But you know what happens when that happens? They end up breaking off and they end up creating sister orgs and covering each other anyhow. And in some games that's the fix. In other games it's not. In other games you just run with the size that you have and you create, the non-hostile list, the neutrals, and you both kind of, that you're a part of each other, but you run independently to achieve your agendas, whatever that is. And right now, even right now in Atlas, you can have 250 people in an org and you can have 4 people in an alliance. That's 1,000 people. Now, what's 1,000 when you've got 10 to 20,000 people online playing? Well, if it's 10,000, 1,000 people is 10% of the population. I'm going to tell you right now, that's way too big for a population that small, a max population that small. Even if you go to 20,000, that's 5% of the population in one org. Again, that's too big. It's too big because it's going to create those big gaps in between your large and your small. And your large are always going to dominate the battles and stuff that they go into. Unless enough mediums, usually not smalls, but if you get enough mediums pulling together, they can sometimes tackle a large. But let's not forget, most large don't go into things alone. They're large and they can use that power to bully and to pressure and to impress others to try to join on to their alliance. The next thing you know, you're not running with an org of 250, you're running with an alliance of 770. And 770 around a 24-hour period can steamroll an alliance that is made up of 130, a few handful of small orgs. That's the biggest imbalance in Atlas at this time. That's the biggest imbalance in every MMO that runs with organizations so large. This update will also include our first phase of the player-to-player secure trading system. This is exciting. This is cool. We regard this as an important aspect of the game alongside our player-ran shops, which you'll be able to experience later this month on the PTR. That's great. Finally, we can trade instead of throwing stuff on the ground and having people pick it up and risk someone else stealing it or whatever the situation is. That'll be good. This I'm thrilled for. Forever ago, I said that what I said was I wish that they would make Ships of the Dam drop shipwrecks down in the ocean so that we could go and get them after we'd sunk them. And this isn't exactly that, but it's pretty close. This was great. Procedurally generated shipwrecks. The March Mega Update will also be introducing a new environment objective for players to explore while out at sea. Procedurally generated shipwrecks exist as a new source to loot for items and blueprints. You'll be able to find them randomly populated throughout the seafloor with a high density present around the underwater trench. You can find them by deep diving into the ocean or looking out for their visual indicators on the surface of the water, or successfully completing the Sextant minigame, which will point you in the direction of the nearby shipwreck. You know, it's funny. I have never once successfully completed the Sextant minigame because, I don't know, every time I tried when I was out there on the sea trying to run it, I would always get distracted by something else. I would never be able to finish it, and I just stopped carrying sextants with me. I just stopped doing it. But this is nice. It will point out where it's at. And if you see the visual indicator, it would also be nice if there was a way to increase the range that you can see that indicator. Just like you can the crates and stuff at sea. There's a series of 3 skills you can get that increases that range. It would be nice if we could maybe get some of that there with it too. I think the shipwrecks are great. I am curious to find out what kind of loot we're going to find in them. I actually hope that they're a variety. I hope they're not of one type. I hope they're of all types. Ship, building, personal equipment. Will have various types with their own unique looks. Players will need to swim into them to locate the chest to loot, which will vary based on the shipwreck. Okay. The structure pieces, planks, will not be able to be harvested. Okay, I get that. To some degree, I get that. I guess it depends on... You probably don't want somebody out there harvesting planks like endlessly and getting loads of... I don't know, though. I don't think it really makes a difference. In my opinion, it's actually harder. It would actually be far more work and slower to harvest planks at sea than it would be to just run and knock down trees and fiber and thatch and metal and just make them yourself. To me, this is probably not going to be... This whole thing, I don't see it as being a real fast... I don't think you're going to go jump down to a shipwreck in a couple minutes and then boom back to the surface, jump in your ship or whatever, and zoom off to another one and do it again and just rinse, repeat. I don't think you're going to be able to harvest these fast enough, so I'm fine with the planks not being harvestable. To me, going down that far in the water after a little bit of wood and fiber and thatch and metal is not even worth it. I would rather just pull it off of islands. We have tames and all that make it far more efficient. This, to me, would not be efficient. And the submarine can just directly attack the shipwreck to harvest the loot. Okay, so this is going to be, again, another incentive to get the sub. Because the sub's just going to be like whap, 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 whap. This, I would be afraid of people harvesting, or farming. I would be afraid of people using the sub to harvest these like crazy, and potentially imbalance the quality of equipment that's out there, especially within whatever orgs get the submarines first. That could potentially be an imbalance. I don't know how close together these shipwrecks will be. I don't know how many will be on each grid. I don't know what kind of respawn timer they have. I don't have those numbers, but this could potentially be a farming issue. Once the chest inside the wreck has been activated, it will begin a timer which will destroy the wreck. Additionally, looting it entirely will cause the wreck to be destroyed. Okay, so that's cool. That way it's a system that's designed to rinse repeat. Okay, this one's been looted, destroy the wreck, spawn a wreck somewhere else. Please keep in mind that this will be our initial implementation for these procedurally generated shipwrecks, and we'll be expanding on them in the future update, as well as introducing more PvE content for players to explore and experience. I think that's great. Again, I experienced a lot of the PvE this last season, and I felt like the PvE was lacking. I would like to see more raid content, balanced raid content. I'd like to see dungeons both in the water and in caves on islands. I'd like to see bosses that are actually balanced well, that pretty much a 6-man team, maybe even instance them, so they can't be overflowed by 20, 30, 40, 50 people at once. Instance them and have them go in and do the whole rundown with raids. I know for myself, running PvE raids and other titles has been one of the highlights of the title. And raids are often in-game. I kind of felt like the previous PvE experience was a bit flat. In fact, very flat. I'm not even gonna tone it down. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I think it was very flat. I don't think that there was just enough PvE content. I think that it really needed some more substance. There's got to be something in there that gets you excited. And I used to get excited over raids. When I would go into raids with 6 or 12, or, if you had a mega raid of like 24 people, but even 6 to 12 is really great. And you have to go in and you take down a mega boss that gives you a really great reward at the end. And you have to fight your way all the way through a dungeon, or even do a raid at sea. Okay, maybe you got to storm a port somewhere, and there's people there defending it. They can be players or they could be NPCs. That can be a lot of fun. Maybe it's got 24 players there, and you're only allowed to have 24 people in it max. So you pick your 24 and you all enter, and you're locked in there for the start of the timer. When the first person enters, the timer starts. You get a 2-hour window. Do the best you can. Sink or swim. That, to me, that stuff was fun. It was challenging. It was even exciting, and it was very frustrating too when someone didn't do their job right and everything fell apart and the whole group got wiped. But they were a lot of fun, and you could do the same thing with ships. Let in 12 ships, and they got to go in and fight this huge challenge into an instanced. Kind of similar to the Kraken, but just a variety of different things. It could be taking down a fleet of ghost ships or ships of the dam, or even something entirely new. Those are just ideas for some great PvE raids. I think a lot of PvE players really, really enjoy the raids, especially if the rewards have to be as good as the raid was. We often don't go through all that if the reward's going to be trash. If it's going to be trash, players don't do it. There's no incentive. It's about that incentive. What do I get at the end for working so hard for that? And so, you need to, and some rewards may even be good to not even be so random as it would be. Look, if you do this reward in this grid, maybe even put a different raid at sea and on land. So there's 2 different raids for each biome in the game. So I'll just give an example. Northwestern Tundra, there's one set of raids. Central Tundra, there's another set of raids. Northeastern Tundra, there's another set of raids. And put them out one at a time. Spend some time on them so that they're quality. And people would get thrilled over that. And I think they'd love a sea raid as well as a on-ground dungeon instance raid. Because then at sea, if you get wiped, everyone lost their ships. You could go in with a variety of ship setups, and it would teach people to also run together. I know a lot of orgs out there are struggling to run with precision strikes and teamwork and to cover each other, and that would also help teach that exercise. I'm sure the devs that are designing this game have... I'm sure that they have played other titles. Okay, and I don't really want to use this example because, honestly, I did not play this title very much to say that I know for a fact it has great stuff in it. But I believe it does from the stuff that I've heard about it. Look at World of Warcraft. And I only use that because everybody knows what it is. There are raids in that, okay, and that you put multiple people together and you go in and you fight them out. And I used to play tons of other titles where we had raids. I remember spending 2 hours in a raid, several raids, and just everyone had to play their roles right on or it would wipe and we'd fail and we'd get frustrated. And then those of us that were diehard would stand outside the raid point and regroup, and we'd go right back in until we succeeded. But that's where you always got the best gear. Okay, that's where you always got sometimes some of the best aesthetics. And that leads me to another recommendation too. I hope that Grapeshot, I tag them and everything in my video, so I hope that they can get across some of this, but I would also like to see, and I think it would help you guys financially, okay, create an aesthetic cash shop. Don't be crazy with the prices, be fair with them, but it permanently links it to the player's account. It doesn't matter what character they roll on PvP or PvE, it permanently links it to their account. Players love aesthetics, and I'm sure you guys could definitely use more funding to pay even more developers or to pay the developers you have. I don't know. But things like clothing, that's aesthetic. Players want to look cool. Okay, male and female, make them separate. There's tons of possibilities and tons of earning potential in those. Aesthetics for ships, aesthetics for tames. Okay, not only the way the tame looks itself, but also like things with like battle armor or saddles or whatever you decide. Aesthetics for building pieces. Like right now, you guys have thatch, wood, and stone. Those are great. But if you could create a skin setup that you could just put over top of those to say this is just the player goes into their settings and they set it up. Maybe you create another UI in the game somewhere that says, okay, this is my thatch, but my thatch doesn't look like that junk thatch. My thatch looks sweet because I have an aesthetic skin for it. Okay, so now my thatch floors look like this and my walls look like this. Create them as a kit. Create them as a type. Like, say, for example, maybe you want Roman. Maybe you want a Roman architecture. And so you can put that on your thatch. And so it will still be thatch, but it will have more of a Roman styling to it. Maybe you want an Aztec styling to maybe the wood. Or maybe you come up with a different type of building material. Maybe it's clay. Maybe you get some clay building structures out there. And you create that with various aesthetic. The whole point, though, is it creates a variety of appearances by using the same resources you already have in the game. Players love their stuff to look cool. So yeah, I would strongly encourage that, but I wouldn't go crazy with it because then people are going to complain about the pricing on it. But if the pricing is fair and it's permanently linked to your account for the history of your account in Atlas, then people dive in on that stuff. And it would help create a little bit of a supplemental income for maybe some more help in taking care of all these expansions and stuff that you guys are doing, all the bug fixes and whatnot in Atlas. We'll also be releasing a major version update on March 8th. Okay, this one already went through, which will be a massive overhaul to the way items are replicated on our networks. I think this is great, man. People duping items. I hope they were trying to prevent that. This should result in a considerable performance gain and reduction in bandwidth on servers. And due to the scale and necessity of the changes, a major update will be required. Yeah, I think that's great. Stop all that hacking trash out there. Additionally, we will be rolling out the peg leg and hook cosmetics, which will be acquired at your nearest Freeport. That's cool. Some people love that stuff. You know why? Because they're cool aesthetics and people want to look cool. Believe it or not, and this is, I've heard this several times already, everyone doesn't actually want to play a pirate in Atlas. To a lot of people, Atlas is not just about piracy. It's a sea adventure. Okay, it's an adventure that you can experience at sea or on land or around the entire Atlas world. And piracy is only a small part of that. And so give players outfits that are for like various militaries, various faction groups. And you don't even have to be like, it doesn't even have to be the typical frontier type appearances. You could even put in some stylish casual wear in there too. You could give some of the ladies some really nice dresses and stuff to wear to evening events. Some of those RPers out there love that stuff. And you could do the same thing with the guys. You know, I don't care how you want to dress them up. Bow tie, tux, spinny hats. I don't care. Everyone has their flavor out there. And some people love one thing more than others. And people flock to that stuff. But again, permanently link it to their accounts. Nobody wants to buy something that's going to be gone in 3 months when the next big patch or something goes in. But they do want to get things that are cool and slick. I know for years in various games, if there was a ninja, I was on it because I've always played a lot of high DPS spike in and out characters, hit and run characters. So ninjas for me were real big. Samurais were real big. Snipers, real big. Just attire that fits that. You know, if you go back to the conventional MMO from like maybe even a decade ago when you had it's still used a lot today, but where you had knights and you had mages and you had clerics and you had rogues, right? And you had rangers and just all these different classes. Each one of them would look different. And so that would be, you know, people want to be able to look different than everyone else. and the aesthetics is a great way to deliver that to the community without ripping off their arm and a leg. And don't make it random. Don't do what EA did with the whole loot box thing. That was this huge issue that was up plastered everywhere. Don't do it random. Let them know that if you get this is exactly what you get. Change the way their rifles look. Change the way the guns look, and give them a variety of stuff. People love that stuff. Our roundup of the dynamic atlas maps will be on a temporary hiatus due to the current Anarchy patch and the fact we have announced the wipe. It will be making a return when the Atlas relaunches with the new claim and war system. I believe, and this is just my understanding, guys, a dynamic Atlas map is a map that is changing. Usually when you're doing like coding or math, if you use the word constant, it means it's always the same. Dynamic means it's always changing. It's like a variable. It's always fluctuating. According to, in that case, whatever equation, whatever your numbers are you're working with. So I think that means that the Atlas map will be changing, which I think is really good. And that would be awesome if you guys did a dynamic map also, or dynamic dungeons and dynamic sea adventures for those sea raids, the ocean raids. Because you potentially right now, you guys have... Let's see what we have here. Let's go to my pictures here. Right now, you have Western Tundra, Central, Eastern, Western Temperate, High Desert. You could even call this High Desert North and this High Desert South. And Low Desert North, Low Desert South. That way they're different, but they're considered different biomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9... 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You could potentially have 18 different biome setups. And this I would call Eastern Tundra South, and this one Eastern Tundra North. And the same with the Central and the Western. They're just separated from north to south. You could even do the same with the polar. We know the polar regions are smaller, but that could even be a very high-end one, because we all know that you go into the water and stuff. In the polar, it almost equals death immediately if you don't have fur and heat and a penguin or a wolf nearby to get on, and all that stuff you got to do in the polar to keep yourself alive. This could be extremely hard. So yeah, that could be even 3 more here, 3 more here. Just tons of biomes to be able to create those raids. It's just really about creating a fun experience for the community that people just want to gobble up, and this would give them tons of content. Because if the rewards that are dropping here are like, well, if you could drop a variety from fine to legendary, or I'm sorry, to mythical, and then maybe it's armor or something, or maybe it's even a special set that says, oh, this comes specifically from this raid. And so it's not a part of the normal armor sets. You can only get it in this raid. People would love that stuff. They would just work tons to get all the armor pieces from the Western Tundra Sea Raid, or change it up. Do the same thing with the ground raid in the Western Tundra, except make the rewards totally different. Not only would they go in over and over and over again to get the best item they could get, because maybe the rolls are also random, the stats on the gear is different, but also they would go in over and over again because maybe last time I went in, maybe I got a helmet. Well, now I need to get the boots, so I just keep going in and going in and going in until I finally get the boots. And maybe I have the boots, and so next time I got to keep going in until I get the chest plate or the shirt. And maybe the Western Tundra is not even about armor. Maybe it is about ship pieces. Okay? Maybe when you get to the end of this raid, it's not about a random piece of loot, but maybe a loot window pops up and you get to pick one of 12 rewards. Okay? Leave it to the player to pick it. There's so many ways that you could do this, that people would have tons of fun. They would continually be playing all these various endgame raids along with the Kraken, and the rewards would be incentive to keep them coming back, assuming that the rewards are good. There's nothing worse than going through a long fight and then what you get out of it was a piece of trash you could have crafted yourself back at your base. So players don't want to see that. They want to see some really cool stuff. And odds are, the cooler you make the aesthetics, the better. People like really slick aesthetics. Take some polls, find out what the community is looking for, and model it after that. You can give some of the stuff away for free, like we are that hat in that other one, for logging in. I forget where it's at. I think it's here. This one right here. Okay, this hat right there, right? We get this for being a part of what I consider to be Season 1 of Atlas. But, yeah, we get this aesthetics. Well, if you created others, you know, that could be picked up in the cash shop or even picked up through those rare raids, that the only way to get it is in those rare raids, that would be awesome. People would eat that stuff up. People enjoy doing those. But they need to be balanced. We don't want to do 50 death runs in order to do like a Fountain of Youth. They need to be balanced for a group of a set size. That's why I think it should probably be instance. That way you get your group, you put them together, everyone invites into the group. You got to create an invite system where you can be put into a group and do a raid setup. And then you all go in together, and then your timer starts. You know, you get a 2-hour window or whatever it is to finish the raid. You know, rinse, repeat. Alright, PV claims, PV claim changes. Okay, that's the other one. Yeah, okay, we're done with that one. Player trading system, shipwrecks, public test realm. This update, including the worst system and claim changes, will be making its way to our public test realm before it hits the entire official network and will be accessible to all players for both PvP and PvE. It is anticipated that the test live will be available to play around, notice it doesn't say on, it says around, the 20th of March. That's probably give or take several days, guys. And so I thought the patch was going to go on the 20th, but maybe the patch isn't going to go in until the end of March. And so just keep your eyes open. They'll announce more stuff. And we will keep you posted should there be any more updates at the time as the time approaches. We appreciate all the feedback you've shared regarding the updates and will continue to work on improving the systems and the game by incorporating aspects of that feedback into our existing developmental pipelines as well as our vision for the game. Upcoming major version. Okay, that was the 8th one. We already went through that. We enjoyed the majority or the variety of creative submissions in the Fortnite show and tell. It's awesome to see all your originality and talent. Feast your eyes on the best of the bunch below. Congratulations to our winners who have scored themselves cash prizes. Pachela Lesnaya, winner. And, well, it's pretty clear to see. I think a lot of guys probably like this because she's nude in the top. But at the same time, if you can get beyond the nudity, okay, it is a very well drawn image. Whoever put this together, what does that say? Is it Gray? Gray Sham? They did a really good job. The hat is really cool. Her tats, the gold she has set up here and there, you know. Yeah, so she looks really good. They did a really good job. This map was interesting too. Princess Sugar. This looks like her. This is her kingdom when the new patch goes in to own her island. That's what I see here. But that's kind of funny. What else we got here? I thought this one was really cool. I've actually seen this temple here before. I thought something similar when I went through it. I was like, man, you could put an awesome base up here. And someone did. They built a whole... It looks awesome. It looks really cool. I think it looks fantastic. It'd be really great to have a PvP raid in a setup like that. Partially because it's so high up. Ships, I believe where this is at, ships can't get to where this is at. So you're not going to be able to shoot it with like ship cannons and stuff. You'd have to do it by foot. And that's what I think people should have to do when they raid your island. I don't think they should be building stuff. I think they should have to come there and either fight you with ships or fight you on foot. After all, they're raiding your base. That is your home turf. I think that would also help people from getting everything wiped and being ticked and leaving the game because they're tired of everything getting wiped out when they log off. I think if you force people to raid bases that are inland, on foot instead of using their ships and stuff, because obviously the ships can't get in that far if there's no waterway. That would really help protect bases a lot. Don't get me wrong, a big orc can still do a lot of damage on foot, but they're not given all the massive tools, and I think that should be the handicap to the attacking force. I don't think they should be given a zillion tools to obliterate your hundreds and potentially thousands of hours. I think it should be relatively difficult. I think if they want to get in and do a precise strike, knock down some specific doors, go in, raid, grab the loot and stuff they want, and get back out, that's all they should get. I don't think they should be able to wipe entire places down and destroy all your cabinets and popcorn all your stuff and obliterate everything that you've done, because really, when I look at a game that is created that way, I see vicious. I see almost what I would call evil intent. It goes beyond competition. We can play sports and stuff like that and be competitive and be good sports about it. But when we're talking about destroying hundreds or thousands of hours of an org's, or even a few players, some players have a lot of time in the game, I think that's excessive. I think we need to throttle it more so that it's more, at least base more. I think it needs to be more base friendly. You want to obliterate stuff, do it out at sea. You want to come in and hit bases, go for it, but you're not going to get tons of tools if it's inland. You know. So, a well-suited and architecturally impressive offering from an imaginative builder who is obviously honed at their craft. Yeah, they did a great job. Some of these other pictures are really nice, especially depending on your graphic settings and stuff. This one looked really good. I thought this was cool, the way the sun was cutting in here. I think that one was cool too. I didn't watch the video. You guys can come here. Like I said, the description will be, or the link will be down in the description. This one was decent. It wasn't bad. It was a kind of a unique front end. Looked kind of strange to me, but hey, everybody has their styles, you know. Everyone loves different stuff. I thought this was cool, the way they caught the cannonball coming at you. We will fight for freedom. That's what I hear here by reading that. That's what I see here. But alright, y'all. Alrighty, that wraps up this log. Thank you so much for becoming a part of our crew, and we can't wait to show all you scallywags, landlubbers, captains, and sea dogs what lies ahead. Happy sailing, Grape Shot Games. Alright, y'all. This is Otto. Like, subscribe, share, do you, and I will see you in the next one.